Tim from the Portland 9/11 Truth Alliance, and we have a monthly speaker forum. And Zahra Alkabi from Iraq is going to be our speaker today, and she has a group called Save Refugees, and part of it is with postcards, and she'll talk about that, and we're happy to have her, and I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you. I would like to welcome everybody tonight for your coming and your patience. I know this work requires a lot of patience, and so I would really mention some of the facts and what is going on in Iraq right now. I know that you are all concerned about the 9/11 truth and what is going on with your organization. I'm aware of that. But part of the work that I'm doing and part of what I want to talk about today, I think it's all related to 9/11 truth and what happened on that day. I would like to start from the modern history of Iraq, and I would really like to start when Saddam was the vice president, and then he became the president of Iraq in 1980. And I would like to start mention the tragedy of the Iraqi people who've been paying this high price for this. I don't know, I can't really find any name for this man, and they call him the dictator. So I think he was more than a dictator, but the dictator was trained and was receiving support from the United States for a long time ago, and that was from the 1970s. Saddam was the vice president during the 1970s, and I'm not sure exactly when he was the vice president until when he became in the real power, because I was born during the 1970s, so I was, a child, but I know enough information about the history. I have heard from different family members, friends, and I have studied and read from newspapers, and I know more information about Saddam. When he was vice president, he was the real power in the country, even though he wasn't the real president. And when the time became ready for him to be a president, and when he was receiving training from the United States, the people who are running this country, I don't mean the people of the United States, I mean the politicians. Saddam became to the power, and he became president in 1980, and first thing he did, he was ordered to be attacked Iran, and that's how Iraq fighted Iran for almost 9 years. Of course, Iraqi people, they paid a very high price for this ongoing war with Iran for 9 years, and millions of Iraqi soldiers had died, and millions of families became, without a father, without a supporter, and many Iraqi children became orphan, and that was like a real struggle for this population for 9 years. And Iraqis didn't know or didn't understand the real reason behind the Iraq-Iran war, except they know that everybody who will reject to join the war, he will put himself and his family in trouble. And so many Iraqi soldiers at that time rejected to go to the war, but their fate was to be killed in front of his family. After Iran won for 9 years, Saddam was trying to prepare the Iraqi army, and also with the green light from the United States, to attack Kuwait. And so he, in one night, many Iraqis, almost all Iraqis, they didn't know, Iraqis, the ordinary people, they didn't know about this attack, and all of a sudden we heard in the news and TV that the Iraqi army attacked Kuwait, and that they were in Kuwait during one night. Within 5 hours, the Kuwaiti National Forces Army, I am not sure if Kuwait that time had a real army or not, because if you compare Iraq with Kuwait, Kuwait is a very small city in comparing Kuwait to the cities that we have in Iraq. And so the Kuwaiti people couldn't resist for more than, I think, 5 or 4 hours. And all of a sudden we heard in the news that Kuwait became one of Iraq's provinces. And that's from the history, this part of Iraq, this was like a small city. Kuwait was a small city, and this small city became separated, and that's how Kuwait became independent and states, while it was like part of the southern part of Iraq, which is Basra and other, places. Of course, Iraqi people at that time weren't happy to see, this new tragedy, because we, as I mentioned, we were really tired from 9 years fighting Iran, and people when I remember in Baghdad when the people heard from some news and some people in the power that time that the war between Iraq and Iran had stopped, and there will be some negotiation with the Iraqis and Iranian authority to stop this war, completely. Iraqi people were, everybody were, dancing, singing in the street of Baghdad for more than 7 days. Because people didn't believe that there will be a time to stop this, ongoing war. And they had lost it a lot. And so they didn't really know when this, disaster will be stopped. So people were really happy and excited when they heard from the news that the war has stopped and the Iraqi army will be soon, all the soldiers will come back to their families and homes. And that didn't last for long, less than a year, and we had this new disaster attacking Kuwait. After attacking Kuwait for 3-4 months, we heard that the United States and some European countries, they were trying to warn Saddam Hussein to get out of Kuwait while he didn't want to. Iraqi people inside Iraq, they weren't aware of the whole game, and they don't know what most of the people around the world, they know, why Saddam was ordered to be attacking Kuwait. And so most Iraqi people, they were watching the news, and they wanted to know why this happened with Kuwait. And most of the families, like if you go to Kuwait even now, most of the families, like part of the family members in Kuwait and the other part live in Iraq, in the southern part of Iraq, in Basra. And so it's like one family. When you go and attack your family, your relatives, your friends, it will be even harder than when you go and attack, other people, like, the war between Iraq and Iran. Basically, some Baathists were saying, oh, these are the Farsi people, and, we are not related. It's another country, and we have hostility even from the history. And so they were making some excuses to justify the war, but there wasn't really any excuse to give to justify the attack that the Iraqi army, did with Kuwait, and the horrible things that some of the soldiers did there. And I remember, like, my relatives, most of them, they decided not to join the army at that time. And some of them, they were already in their units. And they decided not to go to Kuwait. And so they decided to walk from the southern part of Iraq. And if you talk about taking a car or taking maybe a train from Basra to Baghdad, this will take you at least 13 hours to come to Baghdad. And at that time, these soldiers, of course, they were afraid, so they couldn't really take a taxi or take, a bus or take anything, because there were so many checkpoints on the road. So they were afraid to do that. So what they did, they were walking from the southern part of Iraq until they reached their homes in Baghdad. And I do remember my 3 cousins, when they came to their homes, their feet were swollen. And they have a really bad, infection, and they were trying to go to the doctor and see what was, the problem with their legs. And that was, if you can imagine, like 50% of the Iraqi army that time decided not to go and attack Kuwait. Some of them, they were lucky enough to come to their home safely. Some of them, their commands or the people who are, in the power, they heard about them and they killed them in their units, and they couldn't go to their homes. The other disaster, when the United Nations, within 7 or 6 months after attacking Kuwait, they were making some meetings and conferences, and then the United Nations with the United States and other European countries decided to keep Iraq under 13 years of sanction. Before the sanction, they decided to attack Iraq in 1991, and they started bombing Iraq, especially in Baghdad. I think it was the night of the 16th January, 16th or 17th January in 1991. And I still remember the first year when they attacked, Baghdad. It was really horrible. Even I can't imagine, or I can't, express by words how horrible that night was, when you imagine 34 countries in the world attacked one city with all the heavy and new technology, the forbidden weapons. They were using all forbidden weapons, and they were attacking everywhere in Iraq. And they were specifically, they were focusing on their bombings Baghdad because it's the capital, and they were thinking that by destroying the infrastructure of the country, they will be able to get rid of the government. Well, they said that, but I don't think that they were thinking this way. So first, when they attacked Baghdad in, I'm not sure was it the night of the 16th or the 17th January 1991, first moment we lost the electricity because they bombed the electricity power. That's the first thing they did. And so within 5 minutes, all Baghdad became dark. And we were trying, we were preparing ourselves for that. So we have, some candles, and we brought some oil lamps, and we didn't know and we didn't think that this will be forever. When the electricity went down, we thought, of course, some people are, bombing, and we are in war now, and maybe next, hour or so, we will have electricity again. But we don't have electricity until this minute in Iraq. And if we are talking, about how many years, that was from 1991 until 2009. We don't have electricity in Iraq. And if you don't have electricity, then you don't really have lots of other, services that is related to electricity. And if you go to the basic needs, the basic services that any country in the world have, Iraq doesn't have this basic, services that can help their people to live and to have, normal life. Like you can have electricity, pure water to drink. You can have landlines, phone lines. You can have internet. You can have some communications. If you go to Iraq, we lost all kinds of communications. We found new ways to live and survive, and which is really difficult for, someone who've never been in such, situation. And if you talk about Iraq, I think if you go during the 1980s, Iraq was much more advanced country among the Arabic countries that time, and one of the modern countries in the Middle East in terms of everything, in terms of education, health system, in terms of technology, in terms of building, reconstructions, everything. If you compare Iraq at that time during the 1980s with other Arab countries, you will find Iraq was much more advanced rather than other Arabic countries, or even the countries that is close to Iraq. Now, what happened to Iraqi people during the 13 years of sanction? The sanction, basically, they decided to prohibit any trades, even if you want to bring some food and medicine and some necessary supplies to the country. They prohibited all these, trades to Iraq, and Iraq wasn't really able to feed, the country, because if you talk about the milk for infant, for babies, in Iraq we don't produce, this kind of milk. So we depend on some European countries and Australia, New Zealand, Brazil. We depend on them to give us this powder milk for, babies less than 1 year. What happened to Iraqi children at that time, because of the sanction, the economic sanction, Iraqi children, they couldn't find enough milk. And so the government, of course, they were trying to make it really organized, and so they can keep these families, receive some food and milk from the government. So the government were giving, if you have a child, they were giving you 4 cans of milk for the whole month. While if you really use these 4 cans, the cans will keep you only for 4 or 5 days. And you can't keep it more than, that. You can't really keep it longer than that. So what happened that time, some, families, they were rich and they have, some other resources. Some families were traveling to Jordan to bring some milk to their children and to sell some, milk to other people. But if you talk about the majority of Iraqi people within that time, the economic sanction, and when most of Iraqi fathers and husbands, they lost their jobs because the economy was really bad because of the sanction. And these people lost their jobs. Even if you were running your own business, your business get affected, of course, by the economic, situation of the country, and you are not able to serve or to produce, something for yourself, for your family, for your community, because your business is getting, down and down. And so even people with their private business and some private sectors and companies, they decided to close their business because they couldn't really survive that time. And according to the UNICEF, they said 1 million Iraqi children had died through the 13 years of sanction. And if you talk about terrorism and what is, going on around the world, I do believe that wars are terrorism. And there will be no more terrorism than if you go and attack a country, if you go and attack it by weapons, if you go and attack it by bombs, rockets, or if you keep this country, if you keep this nation under economic sanction. This is another face of terrorism. The other part, the saddest part of the wars, I know that you also know most of Iraqi children, most of them, they were born with the birth defects. And so Iraqi children, from the 1991 until this moment, if you go and check some of the statistics, you will find that the percentage were, I'm not sure, but I think before 1990s, if you go to 1980s, there was 16 cases of birth defects from 16 out of 100,000 new birth. So 16 birth defects out of 100,000 birth. That was during the 1980s. If you go to Iraq, and some statistics from the Ministry of Health, in 2003, not now, in 2003, you will find the percentage went high more than 100%. And now we said 16 out of 100,000. Now the new percentage is 116 out of 100,000. So it's 100% increased. So these children who've been born within these, wars and sanctions and the current war, I mean, isn't that all about terrorism? If you have your child in your stomach like this, you have, I don't know, I can't say it's a child because I have, lots of images I received from a friend of mine about the the birth defects and the depleted uranium effects on Iraqi children, you really look to these images, you don't see these, human beings. You don't see they have bodies and they have the shape that we know, or that the shape that we recognize for babies. So if you talk about terrorism and what is going on around the world, then what you say about these cases, the millions of Iraqi children who have been died, the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children who are struggling because they were born in a very strange, scary way. Now we go to the current situation and the 2003 war, occupation, invasion. Some people, they call it the liberation of Iraq, whatever you call it. You find any name you like to use. If you go to 2003 until 2009, we all know and we heard lots of excuses to justify why the United States and the British attacked Iraq. One of these excuses, they said that Saddam was related to Al-Qaeda groups, and that he was supported them and he was, working together with them, and he was like a big threat to United States and. So if you go and check by Google, just, a few clicks, you will find there wasn't any relation of any kind between Al-Qaeda and Saddam. In fact, he was trained and studied by the CIA. And how come, this person be friends to another group that is absolutely doing something against, his friends? Another thing I want to remind people that Americans are really afraid from Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and his people. I don't know if some Americans know, or most of Americans know, or maybe they don't know, that this group was also founded and supported by the United States. And this group wasn't really effective or powerful without the help and the support of this country. And so if I create a game, then I shouldn't be afraid of this game because I already made this game. And so I should know how to deal with it. Even if the game, went out of control, then I should know how to deal with this game because it was my game, right? Yes. And so I don't see why some Americans people, even now, they do believe that Iraq was somehow, related to what happened to some American people and what happened in the attacks of 9/11, and that some Iraqis are involved with this group, Al-Qaeda group. I want to say that as Iraqi person, I grew up in Iraq, in Baghdad. We really were protected very well by Saddam and his government. We didn't have any freedom for the most simple things that most of countries around the world they have. And the simple things I'm talking about: cell phones, internet, satellites. In Iraq, we didn't have this. We didn't use cell phones. We didn't know what is the internet, while all the countries, around us, they were using this technology. And they were using this kind of communication. Iraqis people, they didn't know, anything about these technologies. And so basically, Iraqi people were living in a big prison, I can say. And they were separated from the whole world. There is no connection between Iraqi people and any other group around the world. And simply because they were unable to reach anybody. If you live in this city, then you will stay in the city and you know all the people in the city. You will not be able to go further than the city because you don't use, the ways that will give you some, ability and some ways that will help you to be connected and go further with your relations and with your contacts or friends. The other thing that we heard, the reason behind the war was that the Iraqi people or Saddam and his government were having the biological weapons, the mass destructions weapons, right? And so the United States inspectors went to Iraq many times before 2003. And they made a survey, and they said clearly to the United States at that time that Iraq, they don't have any kind of weapons that you are afraid of, and they don't have any kind of nuclear programs that needs to be destroyed or attacked. Well, they used this, excuse, and they didn't want to acknowledge that report from the United Nations at that time, and so they decided, the United States and the Central Intelligence from the United States decided to have their own inspectors, and they sent them to Iraq, and they were trying to find anything, and they couldn't find, and that was before 2003, and they came back and they said, we couldn't find anything that you are afraid of. Yet, they moved with their plan and they attacked Iraq, and they did what they were planning to. Now, why this ongoing war still in my country until this minute? If we are talking about Saddam had, a gun. If we are talking about the biological, the mass destruction, the nuclear weapons, they couldn't find any. If they were talking about the relations, the connections between Al-Qaeda and some Iraqis, then this is a very stupid game, and now they know more than I know. And I don't really know why, many people around the world are just quiet about it. And they feel comfortable. They don't want to talk about the Iraq war anymore. I talk to many people, and some of them, they are peace activists. Some of them, they are journalists. Some of them, I don't know, they belong to different, interests and fields. And they seem to me that most of the people, we are talking about the people who live in the United States and out of the United States. They feel that this is old issue and we don't want to talk about it anymore. We already covered that topic, right? And so we want to move on with the hot issues. Even the people who I respect and I consider them my friends, I feel very much frustrated because whenever I want to talk about Iraq and I bring this issue up, they say, we want to talk about Afghanistan. We want to focus about what is going on with Iran. Some people want to focus on the Israeli-Palestinian struggle. Okay. I am not talking about this, and I am not motivated only because I'm an Iraqi person. I am motivated because the problem and this issue is really more important than anyone might think. If we think about how Saddam came to the power, he was sponsored and supported by the United States, as I said. If we think about all the wars and the disasters that Iraq and Iraqi people have been through, the United States were again behind, every story. If we think about the disaster, the 13 years of economic sanction and how many people died and how many innocent children paid the price, then the United States with some other European countries were behind it again. If we are talking now about the new administration and the new news and the happy news that we are going to pull out the troops from the cities, which is good. Now, I don't know how many of you knows about a few days ago, some American companies, oil companies, of course, 8 oil companies, they were at the Green Zone in Baghdad in a fancy hotel. And they were trying to get some contracts to control the Iraqi oil for 4 decades. That means 40 years. And that happened just a few days ago. So if people think that the situation in Iraq will be quiet and that the war is all over, we don't want to talk about it, it's not important anymore, because our troops will be out of the cities, right? Then I really don't know or how do you frame that all oil companies, British companies, American companies are controlling the oil fields and the gas, the natural gas in Iraq, and they are running to get some contracts for 4 decades. I also don't know, and I don't see why we have in Baghdad the biggest U.S. embassy in the world. And what does that mean? If it is only embassy, then why this embassy should be huge, just like Saddam and his government? Actually, they are located in the biggest palace for Saddam. They are using this big palace for the embassy. And many people and high officials are there, and they are working even harder than anyone else. So it is not only about whether take or not the troops out of Iraq. It is more than that. It is to control the Iraqi national resources. It is to control the Iraqi government and the Iraqi oil. It is to get rid of the national people, the patriotic people in Baghdad, and to cause all the problems that you all know now. Iraqi people are segregated, separated, and people are fighting each other, and people are killing each other. And this problem had been created only after 2004. The troops, when entered Iraq in 2003, most of Iraqi people, as myself, I was really happy to see that they were getting rid of Saddam and his government. And I was in Jordan, I wasn't in Baghdad that time. And we were watching the news 24/7. And I saw on TV many Iraqi people and families. They were carrying Donald Rumsfeld pictures, Bush pictures in the streets, and they were welcoming the U.S. soldiers by flowers. And these are the Iraqi people, because they believed at that time that they were really, truly came to liberate this country from the dictatorship. And of course, everybody was happy to hear that or to know that. I decided that time, and I was out of the country because of Saddam and his Ba'ath Party. I decided that time to go back to Iraq. I said, if Saddam is not there anymore, then I will take my children and go back there. But then, like 1 month after another, we were watching the news and following up with our friends and relatives and families. And they were telling us, now the situation millions degrees worse than Saddam and his people. And if anybody out of Iraq is thinking to go back, then we tell you, don't come here. Stay where you are, because you are in a safe haven. And don't think to come back to Iraq right now. And so I really don't know, like, how many years should Iraqi people pay the price if some politicians are thinking or planning to control the oil or the natural resources of Iraq. And how many people should die, how many children, innocent, spirits, should pay the price. If we talk about millions of Iraqi children during the 13 years of sanction, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands Iraqi soldiers died during the Iraq-Iran war. I don't know how many people have been killed and injured during the first Gulf War, the 1991. I don't know how many Iraqi people are dying now. And no one really knows the number, because Iraq in a big mess. There is no any other agency, organization, or some people are counting how many people are dying in Iraq. No one knows. How long this should continue and why? And that's what I want to remind American people, other people, that Iraq is not an old issue, and it will not be a resolved issue. If you really want to resolve this issue, then we have to ask all the people in Iraq, all the foreign, I don't know what you call them, the high officials, diplomats, soldiers, who are they, what they are doing. I want to ask them to get out of Iraq and leave Iraq for Iraqi people. Thank you. I would like to mention something about my apology and forgiveness campaign. And we designed some of the postcards. Apology and Forgiveness campaign is a campaign and initiative of Save Refugees, my organization, to help Iraqi people to get hope and to build bridges of peace and understanding between Iraqis and Americans. I do know I've been living here in the United States for 2 years now, and I do know that American people are nice people and friendly, and they are working really hard to do something for Iraqi people. And they sometimes they cry in front of me and they say, we don't know what to do. You know, it's bigger than what we can do. It's more than what we as peace activists, as ordinary people, you know, it's bigger than us, and we just feel overwhelmed. Tell us what to do. Well, if you want to write and sign this postcards, giving your apology, I know that you yourself personally hurt Iraqi people, but I know that my country had been destroyed and is burning right now under the name of the United States and the democracy of the United States. So if you want to write the letter and apologize to Iraqi people about anything you might think should mention in this card, you might say to Iraqi people, because we are trying to collect 1,000 postcards and send them to Iraqi people. And if we talked people to people, if we made this personal connection, it will be easier in the future to send some American delegations, to send some American, groups, to see Iraqis, to meet with them, because then you have the opportunity and you have the chance to talk to Iraqi people and you are not afraid. If you don't get this opportunity now and let them know, even if I said the troops pull out from the cities, even if the troops pull out from Iraq, then there is still responsibility on American people to talk to Iraqi people and say that we are sorry for everything that happened to your country. And whether or not you are supporting this party, that party, I don't really see any reason for this ongoing disaster in my country. And so Americans need to talk to Iraqi people, and Americans need to ask for forgiveness, because we don't want to have the problem grow bigger in the future. And I don't imagine for 7 years these children who lost their families, their parents, what kind of generation Iraq will have. 7 years of disaster. These, new people, these teenagers, the young people, when they grow up and they know that their country, their families had been completely destroyed by the United States and Britain, of course, then what are these young people are going to be in the future? So that's why we are trying to make the personal connection between people here and people there, and give the opportunity to some of you to let your voice be heard. This is the basic idea of the Apology and Forgiveness campaign. Thank you. I'm done. Any question? Any?
No questions?
All right, well,
I would just make a comment first, just sitting here with a heavy heart, as I always sit with a heavy heart. But just to be in the presence of it with you is, quite overwhelming. I'd just like to make a comment. I already signed one of your cards, and I think that the first thing that occurred to me was sign one of these cards. What do I do? Say I'm sorry for killing your whole family, for ruining your country? But I see now why I did it. And thank you.
Thank you.
each part of the process, the horror. I can't speak.
So what was it like in Jordan for the Iraqi refugees? What was the life like there? Were you in the camp, or can you tell me?
Yeah, actually the situation of Iraqi refugees, not only in Jordan, but if you go to any country, like the neighboring country around Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt, Iran, Turkey, it's a very difficult situation because for years the United Nations didn't want to acknowledge the problem. Of course, they don't want to say, oh, look, we have all these millions of people escaping their, homes, and because it's not safe, and for some political reason, they don't want to advertise the problem. And the United Nations didn't want to give any status, for these, people and refugees, any rights. For me, because I was living in Jordan, I know the situation pretty well, and I can tell you, from 2003 until 2006, and that is 3 years. 2007, 4 years. Iraqi refugees in Jordan lived with no rights at all. When Iraqi person come to the border between Iraq and Jordan with your Iraqi passport, of course, the Jordanian will let you enter, and they will stamp your passport with 3 months only. These 3 months of visa are supposed to be a tourist in the country. So you are a tourist, you are not a refugee. A tourist means that you are not allowed to work, you are not allowed to send your kids to school, you are not allowed to have your own business if you are a businessman, you are not allowed to buy, if you have money, to some Jordanians properties, or do anything to live, you and your family. You are not allowed to have legal residence. You are only allowed to stay in the country for 3 months. After 3 months, you have to leave. Of course, people, they don't leave because they can't leave. So they stay in Jordan illegally. After your, 3 months of visa get expired, you just stay in the country illegally. And so you are not allowed to do anything, basically. You stay in your house and you don't know what to do with your children. You don't know. There is no camp for refugees in Jordan. So Iraqis, when they enter Jordan, they just go to Amman, the capital, and they just stay, in any house, apartment, or stay with some friends and families, and you have to pay the rent, and you have to pay the utilities, and you have to buy food, and you have to live, right? So from 2003 until 2007, Iraqi children didn't go to school. Iraqi refugees didn't get any rights. The United Nations didn't admit the problem. And if we are talking about 750,000 Iraqis in Jordan, that is almost 1 million Iraqi, person in Jordan. They were living within that circumstance. They couldn't get anything, they couldn't do anything, and they were always afraid from the Jordanian police because they could be deported at any time. And that happened to many, many families where the father or, the sister or the mother was caught in the street and deported to Iraq, and the other, the rest of the family is still in Jordan. So the situation was really difficult. Some of the international organizations and humanitarian groups came to Jordan, and I worked with lots of organizations to help Iraqi refugees in Jordan. they came and they were studying the situation and they were trying to, make publicize this problem and talk about it, and they make lots of interviews with lots of Iraqi families, and finally we heard that the United Nations acknowledged the problem of Iraqi refugees, and they were starting to issue refugee status to this family, and that was at the end of May 2007. And so for 4 years, Iraqi children didn't go to school. Iraqi families were struggling to find a job or to be illegal in the country. If anybody in the country, if any Jordanian wanted to cause any problem for you, it will be so easy for them to do so because they know that you are illegal in this country. Even if you didn't do any mistake, even if you have the right to say, these families are trying to put me in trouble, I didn't do anything wrong for them, then you will be the person who's in trouble because you are illegally in this country. So it was really difficult for Iraqi refugees to live, within this situation for 4 years. But it's getting better. Like, as I mentioned, children can go to school right now. The United Nations are helping some families, to get some money to pay the rent, to pay the utilities. And it's not, a perfect situation. It's not good situation, but it's getting better than before. Yes.
I think I can bring myself to speak now. I wanted to ask you about the independent media in Iraq, if such a thing exists. Is there any media, is there any newspapers or people that do blogs from Iraq that's not influenced by the Pentagon? Because I know that everything that we see here, it goes through the Pentagon, like directly from there. They have a huge Hollywood set in the Green Zone, and it was designed by people that make our movies, to look really cool and awesome and make us really love and adore the person that's sitting at the podium. But what we see is sanitized. We hear the word war and that's it. We don't see they don't even allow us to see our soldiers' bodies, just the caskets. So I wanted to ask you, if I want to see, because I want to see, I need to, for me.
Yeah.
Where do I go?
I don't really, I'm not sure. But for me, like, if I want to get some news, if I want to get some information, I always have lots of people and lots of contacts. I can check and I can see, like, look, I heard that in the news. Is that true or not? And they tell me whether that was true or not. They talk to me, they tell me some stories, and they give me, like, the clear image from their perspective. And they are ordinary people. They are not, professional journalists. They are not politicians or some people who are in charge with, TVs or radios. For the formal ties of newspapers, TVs, radios in Iraq right now, of course, everything under control. And if some people were trying to do some work, then these people are not, able to do so anymore. Some people are trying to get some news through blogs, as you mentioned, and through internet. If you Google, about, some Iraqi groups or independent, or even like individuals getting, some news out of Iraq, I think you will be able to find lots of resources. Some people are trying to videotape, some accidents or something happened in the street or in a public place. They just go to internet and advertise it. And some people, they have blogs and they write, about what is going on and what do they know, what do they see. So yes, I think you can find. The problem you might face, though, most of these people and these, videos or articles were written in Arabic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just have a couple of resources if anybody wants them. I'll just put them out there. Really fun, wonderful resources. One is Uruknet, URUKNET.org. .net or org, I'm not really sure, but that's a really fine one. Another one is the Electric Intifada. And then there's the Laila Anwar, ANWAR, and she posts from Iraq every day.
Okay, thank you.
In English?
In English.
Oh, wonderful.
Last one was Lila.
Laila, Layla, Anwar, ANWAR. And then there's Darjamal, who also good sources.
Zahra, have you ever spoken with our Congress people who vote to fund the wars all the time?
I went to Washington, D.C. in July 2007 as soon as I came to United States, and I was running at the Senate building. Actually, I didn't set up, a meeting or, any appointment. I talked to maybe more than 10 of them, and I was trying to hand them some of the images of the Iraqi children who've been injured by war. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to ask them to help the Iraqi children or the Iraqi people who've been injured by war to come to United States and get their medical treatment free. This is at least what they can do. I talked to some people, congressmen. They were angry. They didn't want to see the images. They didn't want to take the flyer or talk to me. I'm not sure, that they are, the people who were funding the war or not. I talked to 2 or 3 of them. They were really respectful and friendly and nice. They listened. They took my flyers and they promised to help. As you might know, I don't know if you know or not, the American embassy in Iraq right now issuing medical visa. So it is true now. If anybody in Iraq want to come to United States for treatment and there is a hospital or a medical center that will be willing to give the treatment, then this person can get the visa to come for medical treatment. I'm trying to get some contacts to talk to some congressmen in Oregon. I'm not really sure if I will be able to do that. If you can help me, if you know some people, I might go and talk. But I didn't do any progress since 2007. Yes.
What relevance, if any, does Kurdistan have to Iraqi people and or refugees?
Kurdistan is the northern part of Iraq, right? And the northern part of Iraq, the majority people are the Kurds. And the Kurds from 30 years ago, they were trying to be independent states and they wanted to have their own states. When Saddam came to be president in the 1980s, and he knew that they have this, will to be independent country and they wanted to have their own government, he sent some people to destroy a village. And you all heard about the chemical gas that he was, using to kill the Kurds people. And I think the name of the village was Halabja. And since that date, the Kurds' motivation increased to be independent. And nowadays, the Kurds people are trying to push the government to get their independency, and they wanted to be a separate state from Iraq. I don't know if this will happen or not, because we have some other countries like Iran and Turkey, Syria. They have some Kurds, and they are afraid and worried if this happened, then it will be a big problem in their countries as well, because they have Kurds. And then the Kurds in these countries will again ask, to be independent. Nowadays, many Iraqi people who've been internally displaced or, they became homeless, they don't have house, and most of these families, they escaped violence from Baghdad. They went to the northern part of Iraq, and that is Kurdistan, because it's safe. It is absolutely safe to go to Kurdistan area. It is not like you are in Iraq. If you go there, it's absolutely different situation. It is safe. They have power. They have everything. It is nice. The weather even nice, and it's different. While the weather, I heard from a friend of mine 2 weeks ago, it's a very dusty and windy all the time, and many people died because they have this, dust storms all the time, constantly in Baghdad. While it is not like that in Kurdistan. So some families, they, decided to move and to be in that safe area, and they left and they went to the northern part of Iraq. And they are living in tents. They are refugees, and the United Nations High Commission of Refugees, they are trying to supply these families with some food, blankets, and heaters when it's cold. I don't know if there is any Kurd people who've been, living as refugees in Jordan, Syria, or Lebanon. I don't know if there are any right now. And I'm not sure how many Kurds came to United States with the refugee status. I know that most of the people who came as refugees now to United States, they are, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, but I don't know about any Kurds. Yes.
In Kurdistan, the refugees there, are they allowed to work?
They are not allowed to do anything, just like Jordan. Yes.
Yeah, I went to your street there, and actually introduced myself to a lot of people and got to speak to a few people. And I was very surprised. And I guess I was more surprised because I thought I was going to meet a lot of anti-war people. And, we were going to be our minds would meld, and I'd have friends forever or something, and I found myself pretty disturbed and confused.
Right.
And some of the things that were actually said were like, my breath was actually taken away. Something like, I guess I get a little confrontational sometimes. I go, oh, look at all the people that are dead, or something like that. I remember challenging this one gentleman, and he said, they deserve it. And I actually had to walk away. I mean, that wasn't to everybody, but I guess my question is, what's going on? Who are the people that are refugees, and how is it that they're so disconnected? I can't even imagine that Americans are this disconnected to the human race. I find it mind-boggling and beside myself, and I found it even more mind-boggling, or just as mind-boggling, or to be confronted with that. Could you address that?
Right. Actually, I'm trying to bring Iraqi people together. And that was the whole idea of the street fair or the block party. And I didn't want to talk about any politics that time, because as you said that you heard or mentioned something to somebody and you were disturbed. And I didn't want to be disturbed at that time because I wanted to let the chance.
You gotta leave me home.
I wanted to give, this opportunity to everybody to come together and be, in this place and just relax and feel comfortable being together, right? The main purpose of my organization is to bring Iraqi people together and to bring Americans and Iraqis together. If you remembered when I was talking, I said that the problem between Iraqis had been created after 2003. And many people became, I really don't know what is the exact word, but many people in Iraq right now became against that, religion or that sect or this group of people. This is true. I don't deny it. For me, I didn't live the last war, and I said, I left Iraq in 2000, and I was in Jordan. I struggled in Jordan, but I was safe, and I was, living normal, positive life. And so I really don't know, like this person who said, oh, they deserve, what was the motivation, behind his words. But what I know, and I experienced that myself with many families, when I talked about the situation, I mentioned, what is going on. Some families are afraid and worried, and they are new here, they just don't want to talk about it. Some people are afraid because they don't know me, because I've been away from Iraq for a long time, and so they don't trust this person. Some people are trying to show the opposite. I have a friend of mine in Jordan, and she's, I can't say she's a stupid, but she's a poor person. One time I brought a group of people, and they are from Texas, and they were peace activists. They were trying to help Iraqi people in Jordan. They were trying to bring, some help and hope for these families. And this woman, she came to this woman from Austin, and she was the Iraqi woman. She was telling her, I do appreciate and I love Bush. I do appreciate, everything that your country is doing to my country, this Iraqi woman. And then the American woman became so confused, and she didn't know what to tell her, right? She was really disturbed, confused, what is the woman talking about? She didn't want to hurt her feeling or be, rude to her, because we were in that woman's house. And so when we left, the American woman decided not to help this family. And she said, tell this stupid woman, I am not supporting Bush. I said, what happened? Because, we were like a group of people in one house, and I was the main interpreter. I was trying to talk to everybody, so I didn't know, what everybody says or, what happened exactly all the time. I was talking here and there, and I didn't hear this woman. I didn't hear her, saying that. And she said that to me. And your people, if they think that they love Bush, then they can go and ask Bush to help them. I don't want to help them. And then I was embarrassed, because I also didn't find the answer, to say to this woman. And I said, okay, if you don't want to help this, woman or her family, it's fine. And then I came home and I called this woman, the Iraqi woman, and I said, what the hell are you talking about? Are you crazy? She said, what? She said, what did you tell her exactly? She said, I love Bush and I appreciate it. And I said, do you know what this woman's mission is? Do you know what she is trying to do, or why she's here, or why she came to your house? And she said, you told me she's from Texas. So sometimes, the people are trying to give the opposite impression because they don't know you. They are not sure what to say. They are afraid, they are worried, they are confused. They don't want to put themselves in trouble. Let's say that. I'm sure with the time, if we can bring, all these Iraqi people together, if we can help building the Iraqi community in Portland, with the time when they feel comfortable, they can talk seriously and honestly. And that time we can judge what they are saying. But I don't know who is that person or what, what was behind him. Any question? Yes.
So is that more of a cultural aspect of the Iraqi people? I know the Japanese are similar to that, but maybe it's where they're not.
You can consider it cultural, and you also can consider it that most of the Iraqi people are Arabs, Muslims. They are too much afraid in the United States to talk to anybody about any politics, right? They don't feel comfortable because they know and they feel that they're the most targeted people in this country. And they don't want to put themselves in trouble.
I have another question. In Iraq, you have religious groups, I understand, the Sunni and the Shiites, and there's a large Christian population too. And it seemed like people lived together in relative harmony. But what I understand now, the Christian population is almost all gone. Right. Can you speak on that? Are you familiar with that aspect?
I have very interesting conversation just 2 days ago with a friend of mine who is Iraqi Christian, who just came to United States. We have a fire in my house two days ago because of what he was saying and telling me.
What?
This Iraqi person, he didn't burn my house, he burned it with words.
Okay.
And I was telling him about, how we can come together, how we can work together, how we can, be one voice, Christians, Muslim, it doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden, like he hit me by his words. And he was saying many horrible things, to me. He said, you say, my mission or my organization vision is to help peace and help building bridges of peace and friendship between people. Is that right? I said, yes. He said, well, I know you are Muslim. I said, okay. He said, and I know that your religion and your book is trying to encourage people to be killer, criminals, and to justify the killing and, the bloodshed. And this is your religion. And I said, what? That was his first, words. Of course, I didn't want to be upset or angry because he was in my house. And second, he's new here. I want to gain his respect and trust. I want to help. I want to be a friend. I was trying to be calm. I gave him the time and, all the time for him to tell me what happened to the Iraqi Christians in Iraq within this current, time. And he told me many things and many stories, and maybe he said lots of things was, true, and he was exaggerating in parts of his stories. I can say that if you go to Iraq history, Iraqi people, Christians, Muslims, they were living together hundreds of years ago, millions of years ago. And we really didn't have any problem. No one attacked anybody by words or by hands. And people were living together just fine, right? I know we have lots of differences, cultural differences and religious differences. Although we live in one country, Iraq is one country, is a big country, and we have Christians and Muslims, but we are really different. And what was he saying to me, like what was upsetting him, he said that if you go to Iraq right now, and if you are a Christian woman, then you can't go to the street just like that, uncovered. And that was like something really like a big problem for some Christian women in Iraq to cover and go out. I said, if you are talking about the current situation, then it is not only the Christian people became, victims or affected by the situation. Because if you go and meet with many Iraqi families and refugees who just came, and you hear their stories, you find Muslim Shia, they were targeted and they were persecuted. You were, listening to some of Muslim Sunni who were persecuted and targeted, and some of their family members were killed or kidnapped or tortured. So if we are talking about the whole, picture, then we are talking about this part of the world where everybody is struggling right now. It is not only the Christian people in Iraq are struggling, which is a big difference. The problem is some extremists from both sides, extremist Islamist extremists and the Christians extremists. They are trying to make this, issue bigger than they can come together and reconcile, right? They are trying to make a problem. If someone talked to this woman like she was a Christian, and someone came and say, oh, your wife or your sister should cover when she go out. But this is not only for this Christian women. We have many Iraqi women are not covered, and they are Muslims, and now they are covered, and they don't want to, right? So it's the same situation for the Muslim woman and the Christian woman to be covered in order for her and her family to be in the safe side. So why they are trying to push that, topic further than it's, the situation of everybody in Iraq, rather than say, oh, it's only the Christians' problem. It is not only the Christians' problem in Iraq. It's the problem of everybody. Iraq is not a safe country for anybody to live right now. It is not safe for you as Kurd, Arab, Christian, Muslim. We have another religion in Iraq, and they are the minority. They, I think maybe there are 5,000 or 6,000 only, while the Christians, I think they consist like 5 or 6% from the Iraqi population. So the Christian people, the bigger community, if you are talking about the other religious, and minority groups in Iraq. But I don't know, and I'm not feeling comfortable. As I mentioned 2 days ago, I had this, discussion, and I was really discouraged, and I was really disappointed, because he was trying to attack. Of course I am Muslim, and I am all with the good, positive, the bright spots and principles, that talks about Islam as a good, religion. And I will not be happy to listen to somebody who is trying to say, you are killer because your religion is trying to promote for killing people, which is not true. And I don't know, whom really behind that? Whom really behind supporting the Christians groups to get out of Iraq and to say something like that, go beyond the border? Who is beyond that? I am not happy to see that. I'm not optimistic. I was optimistic when I had my block party. I am not optimistic right now, because it seems to me that there are really some people and some agenda, hidden agenda, that trying to deepen the conflict in Iraq between Iraqi people. And it is a serious problem. It is bigger problem than we can imagine, that they want to keep this country and these people in this situation for a long time. Yes.
What you're expressing now is really at the crux of the whole thing. This is not an accident, this is engineered. If you go back to the British Empire, the history of colonialism was the art of exploiting the ethnic and religious differences and trigger it and manage it to their advantage.
Exactly.
So it hasn't changed. This agenda is still on the table, and this is what is being applied. It was applied in Cyprus, it was applied in Lebanon to dreadful effects, and it's still going on in Lebanon.
Right.
And every place, and those were experiments, and setting people, dividing, and now it's coupled with another agenda, which is genocide. Literally letting people genocide one another.
Yes.
And so it's very important to warn the Iraqi people that they are being the target of another experiment in mass genocide. The more Iraqi dies, the less there is to deal with, and the more freedom with the natural resources they have.
Of course.
And so things like depleted uranium, those are weapons of mass destruction. This is genocidal weapon. It's going to kill everybody there. The generation you're talking about, that thing doesn't go away. They're all on a death sentence, everybody.
Yeah.
So I mean, they need to know that they're fighting for their lives, literally. And it's not, the American people themselves can do nothing because they're the next Iraqi. Whatever has happened in Iraq is going to be done to the American people in the very near future. They were studying what happened when you cut the power, the electricity, the utilities. How long will it take to transform people and have them set up against each other, fighting one another? And so they're studying this. This is just a field experiment for them, and also getting rid of as many people as they can. So if there is a unity, Christian, Muslim, Iraqi, Americans, we are all sheep going to the slaughterhouse. So there is a narrow band of people that are in power, that have always been behind empires, and they've always looked at us as expendable resources. And now they don't need us, they just want the material stuff. And it's very harsh to hear this, because everybody said this is impossible. They can't. We are important, we're indispensable, we vote them in office. We've been led to illusions that we count for something. We're just in the way right now. And that's why Madeleine Albright can say, well, 1 million Iraqi children dead, well, it's justifiable. The price is acceptable. Well, it's just part of a larger agenda. So this is something that concerns us all. And we need to our very existence is at stake, all of us. And it doesn't matter what we believe, we're all the targets.
Yes.
There is no way to so-called, if I toe the line, I conform to this, or I'll be safe if I'm with those people, or I'm against Bush, or with Bush, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There is no safety for anybody. And that's the ground that they need to really understand. This is a fight to the death.
I do know what you were talking about, and as you also know that we had a British occupation from the history, and the British policy in Iraq was divide to conquer.
Exactly.
And so the British people are really knowledgeable of the Iraqi society more than Americans. And their current situation in Iraq, the current situation, and with all these, problematic circumstances and all the new ideologies and thoughts and new groups and new perspectives in Iraq, these were results of search and studies for a long time. It is not, some people, they say Bush and his administration, they were stupid, they didn't know what to do with it. No. They weren't stupid, they do know what to do, and they set their goal long time ago, and they were working within that goal, and they are achieving everything according to the plan.
Absolutely.
And so it's really difficult for some people in Iraq right now, Iraqi people, I mean, they are the poorest people because they are the sheeps. They don't know.
They've been slaughtered.
They don't know, because if you live in this violent situation for years, you will be no longer, able to see the further picture and what is behind this situation. They think about this, the current situation now, what is going on with me, with my friend, with my neighbor. That's it. They don't think clearly, and they don't know what is behind the scene.
That's what happened to the American Indian here too.
Right.
Same situation.
Yes.
So if we are the people who want to make the change, who want to bring some hope to Iraqi people, then we have to talk about these hidden agendas and how the situation in Iraq became like this. Because as I mentioned before, many American people right now, even peace activists, they feel very comfortable. They just don't want to talk about Iraq. And this is a very stupid, point of them when they think that it's all over. It's not all over. This is a long-term plan, and people have to convince, other people about the seriousity problem. Yes, this is just the beginning. Exactly, yes.
I've only studied war academically. I mean, you know war. I know it academically. But what I think you're talking about is there's textbooks written. Okay, there's schools that teach how to make a society destroy itself. It's called balkanization. Okay, I remember a major news story about two British SAS, this is English Special Forces, that were caught by Iraqi police that were dressed up like Arabs, bushy black beards, machine guns, explosives, and they were machine gunning crowds. The Iraqi police put them in jail, and then the SAS attacks the police station. Okay, it's called balkanization, and what they do is they foment one group against the other, and they make them kill one another. And it's older than dirt. Okay, that's how old the techniques of it is. And I'm wondering, could you tell me, like, in a percentage or your best guess, how many of the Iraqi people actually know that they're being forced by coercion, by violence, to kill one another? I mean, how educated are they, do you think? Like, and what can we do to try to show them that they're being manipulated into killing one another? Because that's the trick that governments, colonial powers do, is if the population that they're trying to control are killing one another, they're not trying to push out the invaders, right? So what, two questions, what can people do to help them understand that this is going on? And how many of them do you think, how many of the Iraqi people do you think actually know that that's what's going on to them?
I'm not really sure, but I can guess that it's a very few percentage. If we talk about 10% maybe of Iraqi people who are really knowledgeable and aware of the situation. I can't say more than 10%. Yes. And if we talk about how can we help them to know, then that's what I'm, saying, that talk about it to Iraqi people, to your friends, to other organizations, write, book, write reports and some petitions and letters by email. Send some messages to other, countries and help some humanitarian groups to carry the message out and let the Iraqi people who don't know about it and hear about it. So we have to talk loudly about it and let everybody knows. And that time Iraqi people will know.
I can do that.
And I would like you to, before I go, because I have to leave, I have another, thing to do. If you would like to come and get the postcards and write a message for Iraqi people, I would really want you to do it now. And after that, I will be collecting the postcards and leave. Thank you.